Hey, KWN listeners, this is Konnor Daigle. I am an intern staff member at the Weight Training Center, and I just wanted to thank Brother Darrell for the opportunity to come on here and share my story. And it's a real big honor. It's a huge moment for me, to start off my testimony and to start off where the Lord brought me from. I want to, take it all the way back. I want to look to my childhood and see the things that have molded me and shaped me into the man I am today. And I'm not ashamed of my testimony, and I will not let the enemy have me feeling guilty or depressed on where I come from. So to take it all the way back, mom and dad was on drugs, got taken from them when I was 5 years old, me and my twin sisters, and was raised by my grandparents in a very loving, very caregiving home. Had everything that I needed, and was very well looked after. Mom wasn't in my life. Dad was visited dad on the weekends, that kind of thing. Broken home, but loving grandparents. Can't complain on how they raised me or the love that they showed me. And grew up playing sports, and did pretty well in school. And life shifted for me in about, I guess you could say, about eighth grade, freshman year, around there. And it was really the friends that I was hanging around. As being raised by my grandparents, they had already raised three sons, and they were getting older. And I went out and hanging out with friends on the weekend. They didn't mind the time alone. For me to spend time at other places. And that ended up with, started off with smoking a little weed and drinking on the weekends. It took a hard turn for me fast. It was not a slow progression for me. I went very hard very early. About 15 years old, was just about a full-blown addict. Ended up making some really bad decisions. Ended up catching some charges I was about 16 years old. Had the decision to make on whether or not I was going to do probation or go to YCP, which is a youth challenge program in Mendon, Louisiana. So I went over there. I spent 6 months in basically a boot camp. And I didn't learn many things from it that I applied at the time, but the discipline that they showed me, and the always saying yes sir, and those kind of things, and the hard work that they instilled in me is what's now helping me out in my Christian walk, with being disciplined on reading the word, with being disciplined on prayer, and spending time with the Lord, even when it is hard and I don't want to. So after YCP, things got really ugly for me. I was about 17 when I left there, and it went full blown addiction, full blown on the streets, running around, and just making terrible life choices. The whole time I had a family that wanted to look after me. I had a family that cared for me. It felt like to me that they casted me out, but I just couldn't be around them because of the decisions I was making. Ended up in a program in Van Cleve, Mississippi, called the Home of Grace, was where I was originally introduced to God. My first encounter with God was really there. They instilled a lot of things in me, and it was a 3-month program, so I didn't leave ready. Very fresh into my interactions with the Lord. Began to read the New Testaments and the Gospels, and as soon as I left, dropped it. Like, I felt the call of God in that place as the ministers were ministering, and as the different churches came and talked and told me that I had a plan for my life. And I began to feel the call. I began to feel that I wanted to walk down the path of ministry, but was completely afraid of it. Deathly afraid. Like, to the point where my first day out of the program, I was like, okay, I got to make a decision. And the decision was to go back to the world. Like, I'm too scared to do this thing. So that led to another at least 4 years, maybe even five, of running away from the Lord, and I could feel there was moments during those 4 and 5 years of running and drug use and a life of sin, where he encountered me in those moments, and he was trying to call me back. I had a couple opportunities to join churches and a couple opportunities to have good Christian friends, and just was still like running from it. It was still no for me. Well, long story short, I ended up getting to the worst point that I've ever been in my life. It was and it wasn't necessarily circumstantial. It was more mental on where it ended up with me. The drugs, the trauma, the pain that I caused, it all came out of me at one time. It was a very scary moment for me and my family, the way that I was acting and the way that state that they found me in. So my dad come to me as I was walking the streets of Rain, and it was a very ugly scene. And he told me that I needed to get some help. And at that point, I was so willing, like, please help me. Like, somebody help me. So he brought me to a psych ward. I spent 3 days there trying to calm down, and next thing you know, I got introduced to the Way Training Center, and it was my only option. I tried to go back to Mississippi, and it was a no-go. It was that got canceled. I tried to go to another place, and it was just God was closing doors and opening up the Way Training Center for me, and I was willing to try anything. I was willing to try anything at that moment because it wasn't necessarily my worst time for drug addiction. It wasn't necessarily the worst circumstances that I had ever been in, but mentally, and it was complete torment. It was very hard. It was suicide. It was, just thinking about depression, anxiety, like fear, just couldn't get out of this cycle ever. I come to the weight training center, and I could remember the moment. It was it still gives me chills. God still brings me back to this moment all the time. I got here on a Monday and I didn't have anything. I had the shirt and the pants I had on. I didn't even show up with any shoes. And we got to Wednesday night service. And during the first worship song, I felt him tugging on my heart. And at this moment, I'm still not mentally stable. At this moment, I'm still not thinking good thoughts. And I felt him pull on my heart. And I ran down to the altar during the first worship song at the beginning of the service, and I got on my knees and I cried out to him. And Pastor Johnny Ray Fontenot, he met me down there at that altar, and he prayed for me, and he led me in the Lord's Prayer and the prayer of salvation. And I believe I was saved before that, but that was the moment for me where I come to the Lord, and I was willing to do anything, and I was desperate. My heart was open. Moving forward, it was a very long journey for me. The journey was tough. There was a lot of pain in my heart. There was a lot of unforgiveness, a lot of bitterness that the Lord had to work out, But all glory to Him, I don't think that in my mind I could have ever made this decision to walk with Him. I think it's all His grace. I think it's all His mercy. I don't make good decisions like this. All these were instilled by him. The relationship grew, and as I spent more time and as I learned more, things just began to come to me. It wasn't long before, and I was wholeheartedly into it. I was all the way. The depression began to leave. The fear began to leave. The shame began to leave. The journey has been so beautiful, and as I walked it out with him, he began to place a call on my life. He began to call me to do ministry, and he began to show up, and he began to show out. And now I'm a year and a half into the Way Training Center. I graduated in February. I'm an intern staff member, and all glory to him. He's given me multiple opportunities to share my testimony and to share messages and walking down this path with him, and he just blows my mind every single day on what he can do. It's absolutely amazing, the journey, and I'm so grateful for people like Brother Darrell, for people like Jared Ormental, for Brother Jared and Pastor Johnny, and men in my life that I can look up to and be good examples. My parents were great. My grandparents were great. I can't say that, but, to look up to men of God is something special, to find a group of men that you can surround yourself with. And it's hard for me to see a future where they're not in my life. The journey's been great. And that was just a little bit of my testimony. As we move forward with this, I hope that this can turn into a weekly thing, and we can begin to share more. And next time, I have a little message prepared, a little something that's on my heart that we can get into. Thank you for this platform, and thank you KWN listeners for allowing me to share. Good.